Now, still on climate change matters, the World Bank says 77 million people globally will face extreme poverty if the infrastructure needed to withstand the impact of climate change does not receive adequate financing. Now, the Global Bank also says that there is more than 100 trillion US dollars of institutional capital in pension and sovereign wealth funds yet to be used to close this gap. While in Morocco, I spoke to Ede Jorge. He's a senior director for the World Bank Group, Social, Urban, Rural and Resilience, a global practice, to find out the role concessional funding will play and, of course, realistic solutions he hoped to see at the COP22.
It is the time for action. The investment that will be made now in terms of energy or in terms of the way that cities grow will stay for us with decades. So the decisions of today are not going to have impact only for the next 2-3 years, it will be for decades. Second, in terms of financing, this is the time to start aggregating financing sources to be able to take action. So it is a combination of the national budgets. It is a combination of the household investments. How do they build their houses? How do they protect themselves? It is an investment from the development partners and donor agencies to be able to, in a more coordinated manner, figure out how to bring this process, and also with the donors so that concessional funding can be directed in a way that brings development for poverty elimination, but in a way that it also takes into account prevention against the impacts of climate change.
Realistically, what are your thoughts on the role green bonds can play in Africa?
There's a need to bring that climate dimension into the existing funding also, meaning when you are building hydropower dams, then to be able to have investments in the hydrometeorological services so that the hydropower dams are better managed. When you are building, as the cities are expanding, how to do the investment on drainage today to prevent more floods for tomorrow. So it is a combination, of course, a lot more funding into this process, but it's bringing the climate dimension into the funding of today.
Now, give me some insight into the World Bank's response to tackling resilience in fragile cities.
Part of what we are really focusing is on a climate action plan for Africa, on important areas like agriculture, landscape management, to make sure that the certification process doesn't go, in terms of cities, in terms of hydrometeorological services. We have mobilized about $3 billion of concessional funding into that direction. How do we see concessional funding? It plays two very important roles. First is really to look and focus on how to support the poorest of the poor in being able to be better protected against the impacts of climate change. It is also helping the regular financing to move into a lower carbon trajectory fund. And finally, it is very important in building the capacity of African countries, both for development, but also for a development that is more climate smart, that is ready for the impacts of today of weather events, but also the impacts of tomorrow, when those weather events are going to be more strong and are going to be more frequent due to climate change.